All right. We had 2 testimonies last week, and we only got through one of them. So we said we would start out this week with the second half of, it's called The Laborers in the Office. It is chapter 103 of the first volume of the Testimonies, and the page is 585. And if we scroll down or flip through the pages, the second testimony is on page 589, paragraph 1. Okay? 589, chapter 103, Laborers in the Office. Let's just do a recap, see how our memories are. I've asked the Lord to help my memory, and He's answered my prayer already this week. I got something sent to me, and I am so excited because I really, really feel like that I lost out on being taught how to recall what I read and how to comprehend what I read. And once the Lord helps me to learn, I will share that with you. If anybody else is interested, it's amazing. Because we are going to be learning how long when we get to heaven? Forever. For eternity. I can't sit here and not put forth the effort to learn what I'm supposed to learn here so that I can learn more there. So I'm just excited, and I hope you can tell, so I can, when I accomplish this, because it's my heart's desire to learn His Word and to remember it and to have meaning in my life for it. And so, anyway, we're going to discuss, if we can recall, what we talked about last Sabbath. So it had to do with laborers in the office, and who was the main people that we discussed last week? Anybody? Huh? No, that's going to be our lesson for this week. So if it wasn't the young people last week, so what?
It was the older people.
It was the adults that were working in the office. Okay? Can you tell me what one thing happened that she discussed with them? What was going on?
Their interests were, and they had other interests outside of what they were doing, taking precedent.
Okay, she used the word trafficking, didn't she? And what did she mean by the word trafficking?
Other jobs or other interests.
Okay, so their minds were divided with their own interest and the work of God and making money. Okay? So what was her admonition to those adults that were working in the office of the publication? What was the significance of the work they were doing?
Highly important. They needed to go out.
Highly important.
It should be their number one focus.
Focus. Focus is the main word. To be focused, to be motivated by what you're doing, to be focused on what you're doing. Yes?
As individuals, we tend to think that, I don't know why we do it, but we do it. But even when we're engaged in the work of God, sometimes the temporal priorities want to engage us into knowing, like, okay, I can give this, give my work and my service to God, but we tend to fail at thinking that He's going to supply our need, and we have to work hard to supply our own need outside of His work. When if we would just really depend on Him, He feeds the birds. Why would He feed someone and clothe someone and house someone and give what they needed when they're doing His work? And I don't know why we tend to do that, but we do.
I think it's a distraction of Satan. Because I think at the end time, we're going to have to be completely, totally focused on our faith and belief in Jesus. If we have any distractions or feel like we can do more than one thing at a time, we have to learn how to focus. Focus on doing God's work and focus on one thing at a time in order to accomplish it in the best way that we can. There are a lot of distractions in the world today, right? I know a lot of times here at church we try to focus on our conversation being on godly things, on the Sabbath, but we don't always succeed. And we have to start praying that we can focus on that. I know sometimes when you pray, don't you have sometimes a struggle of staying focused in your prayers? And I've asked the Lord, I'm wandering, Lord, please get me back on track. What am I here for? I'm praying, and I need to stay in the prayer, attitude of prayer. And it's very disheartening when I'm all over the place. You know, I'm trying to think of what I'm going to say to somebody about the Lord or this, that, and the other, and it's like I'm talking to the Lord. I'm not talking to that person now, you know? And I think that there's so much happening in the world, so many things to get in the way. And so it's important for us to stay focused and make sure that we are in charge of being focused. And how can we be in charge? Can we do anything of ourselves? So who's in charge of helping us be focused? Holy Spirit. He's with us. He's going to teach us. He's going to guide us. He's going to direct us. But we have to stay focused. What was another thing she mentioned to the adults that were working in the office?
They were sitting too much where it was not ventilated.
Their environment wasn't healthy. What they were doing, sedentary all day long, wasn't healthy. So they needed to pay attention to putting it all together and including all the aspects, the important aspects of it, so that they could, in other words, if you're thinking about what you're putting on that paper and you're praying about what the words mean and you're praying for the people that are going to receive that word, can you imagine how fast the day would go by? Because you're focused. You're so focused doing things that it will go by really fast. And like Jerry said, you don't have to worry about your outside job. If the Lord can provide for the birds and the animals and the lilies and everything else that He's created, and He thinks of you so much that He sent His Son to die, then He's going to take care of all your needs. He'll make a way for all your needs. So you don't really have to divide your time if you give the Lord all of the time that you're spending on His work. All right, was there anything else that you found in that testimony? Anything? Okay. We're going to divide up the second testimony, and I'll just read the short little line there. And then if we'll do 2 paragraphs at a time, if you raise your hand and just, there's like 8 paragraphs, I think, and we can get through this. And Jerry read it last week, the first 2. If she would repeat it this week so we can get focused, I'd appreciate it. The following is the second testimony written in May 1867 and addressed to the young who were laboring in the office.
Dear young friends who are employed in the office of publication at Battle Creek, a burden is resting upon me in regard to you. I have been repeatedly shown that all who are connected with the work of God in publishing the present truth to be scattered to every part of the field should be Christians, not only in name, but in deed and in truth. Their object should not be merely to work for wages, but all engaged in this great and solemn work should feel that their interest is in the work and that it is a part of them. Their motives and influence in connecting themselves with this great and solemn work must bear the test of the judgment. None should be allowed to become connected with the office of publication who manifest selfishness and pride. I was shown that lightness and folly, joking and laughing, should not be indulged by the workers in the office. Those engaged in the solemn work of preparing truth to go to every part of the field should realize that their deportment has its influence. If they are careless, jesting, joking, and laughing, while reading and preparing solemn truth for publication, they show that their hearts are not in the work or sanctified through the truth. They do not discern sacred things, but handle truth that is to test character, truth which is of heavenly origin, as a common tale, as a story merely to come before the mind and be readily effaced.
Who would like to read the second two paragraphs? Yes, please.
While in Rochester, I saw that we had everything to fear in regard to the office from a health standpoint, that not one connected with it realized the necessity of thorough ventilation. Their rooms were overheated and the atmosphere was poisoned by impurities resulting from exhalations from the lungs and other causes. It is impossible for their minds to be in a healthy condition so as to be rightly impressed by the pure and holy truth with which they have so much to do, unless they place the proper value upon the pure, vitalizing air of heaven. I was shown that if those who are so closely connected with revealed truth give no special evidence in their lives that they are made better by the truth, which is kept so constantly before them, if their lives do not testify to the fact that they are loving the truth and its sacred requirements more and more fervently, they are growing harder and will be less and less affected by the truth and work of God, until they find themselves destitute of the emotions of the Spirit of God, dead to the heavenly impress of truth. Eternal things will not be discerned by them, but will be placed upon a low level with common things. This, I saw, had been the case with some connected with the office, and all have been remiss in this respect to a greater or lesser degree.
Who would like to read the next two paragraphs? Okay, Marlene. Hold on a second. It's coming.
I saw that the work of present truth should engage the interest of all. The publication of truth is God's ordained plan as a means of warning, comforting, reproving, exhorting, or convicting all to whose notice the silent, voiceless messengers may be brought. Angels of God have a part to act in preparing hearts to be sanctified by the truth published, that they may be prepared for the solemn scenes before them. None in that office are sufficient of themselves for the important work of discreetly managing matters connected with the publications of the truth. Angels must be near them to guide, to counsel, and to restrain, or the wisdom and folly of human agencies will be apparent. I saw that angels were frequently in the office, in the folding room, and in the room where the type is set. I was made to hear the laughing, the jesting, the idle, foolish talking. Again, I saw the vanity, the pride, and selfishness exhibited. Angels looked sad and turned away grieved. The words I had heard, the vanity, pride, and selfishness exhibited, caused me to groan with anguish of spirit as angels left the room in disgust. Said an angel, the heavenly messengers came to bless, that the truth carried by the voiceless preachers might have a sanctifying holy power to attend its mission. But those engaged in this work were so distant from God, they possessed so little of the divine and were so conformed to the spirit of the world, that the powers of darkness controlled them, and they could not be made susceptible of divine impressions. At the same time, these youth were deceived and thought they were rich and increased in goods, and had need of nothing, and knew not that they were poor and miserable, blind and naked. Those who handle precious truth as they would sand know not how many times their heartless indifference to eternal things, their vanity, self-love, and pride, their laughing and senseless chatting, have driven the messengers of heaven away from the office.
Those are two solemn paragraphs. Who wants to read the next two paragraphs? We're going to go back and discuss these. Okay, Janet?
In deportment,
The heart. Oh, yeah, in deportment, right, sorry.
words and acts, all in that office should be reserved, modest, humble, and disinterested, as was their pattern, Jesus, the dear Savior. They should seek God and obtain righteousness. The office is not the place for sport, for visiting, for idlers, for laughing, for useless words. All should feel that they are doing a work for their master. These truths which they read, which they act their part to prepare, to send out to the people, are invitations of mercy, are reproofs, threatenings, warnings, or encouragements. These are doing their work as a savor of life unto life, or of death unto death. If rejected, the judgment must decide the matter. The prayer of all in the office should be, O God, make these truths, which are of such vital importance, clear to the comprehension of the humblest minds. May angels accompany these silent preachers and bless their influence, that souls may be saved by this humblest means. The heart should go out in fervent prayer while the hands are busy, and Satan will not find such ready access, and the soul, instead of being lifted up into vanity, will be constantly refreshed, will be like a watered garden. Angels will delight to be near such workers, for their presence will be continually encouraged by them. A power will attend the truths published. Divine rays of light from the heavenly sanctuary will attend the precious truth sent forth, so that those who read will be refreshed and strengthened, and souls that are opposed to the truth will be convicted and compelled to say, these things are so. They cannot be gainsaid.
All should feel that the office is a holy place, as sacred as the house of God. But God has been dishonored by their frivolous and lightness indulged by some connected with the work. I saw that strangers from abroad often went away from the office disappointed. They had associated it with everything sacred, but when they saw the youth or others connected with the office possessing but little gravity, careless in words and acts, it caused them to doubt whether, after all this, is really the work of God to prepare a people for translation to heaven. This is a really solemn testimony, isn't it? Let's go back and discuss some things. And maybe we can apply some of these things that she's giving counsel to, working in the office of the publication, to our own lives and the people that we deal with, or as our church family. Just kind of think outside the box and see how these things can apply to us. I know we have some youth in the sanctuary, so tell us what you think and how you react with your peers, and what the Lord is asking us to do. So let's go back up to the first couple paragraphs. And what kind of struck you most as she started out with her testimony? Their main thought was it was just a job. They didn't really take what they were doing to heart. They were getting paid for what they were doing. And then they felt they could do whatever they wanted because the job was getting done. So, are there things like in our lives that we go through every day, and just because, well, you might not get paid if you're working at home, but if you're out and have a job and you're getting paid, can you utilize your job to spread the gospel? By how you act, by your conversation, by what you do, by what you engage in on your job? Yes?
Isn't that really the gospel?
Yes.
How we live our lives? It's not what we say so much as how we live our lives.
I think if what you say doesn't match with what you do, you're sending a message. So what you do, you don't even have to speak if you're showing the gospel in how you act. What you eat in front of somebody causes a conversation that you can share. What you wear in front of somebody is a conversation that you can share. Entering into jokes or not jokes. Language. There's some awful language in the workplace. Do you participate in it or do you step aside from it? So you're right. We're the gospel wherever we go, and we can either give the message for God or not for God. Anything else in that?
That old statement, you may be the only Bible some people have read, can either cause people to come to you or to run away very fast.
I know there was some person, I'm not going to divulge who, but they had a life of living around a person that called themselves a Christian. But they lied a lot. They weren't very truthful or honest. And that person came to the conclusion that if that's what a Christian is like, I don't want any part of it. So we can set the wrong example, as well as if you're going to wear the name, at least know what it means and be consistent with what it means. So, Jerry, you had a thought?
No, I was just thinking that it seems like it's always in every situation, I guess, it's the root of the problem is whether or not our hearts are really consecrated to God or not.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on, it's like keeping the commandments.
Mm-hmm.
You can try to keep the commandments on your own. You really don't get very far with it. You might be able to have a little advance here or there, but there's always step back. We can't do it unless we love God first.
Mm-hmm.
And when we love God first, He comes into our hearts and He makes it that way. I mean, it's like raising your children. We love our children, therefore we don't, treat them badly.
Right.
It depends on, they will do, when our children love us in return, they want to do whatever, they can please us by doing. It comes from their heart. Same principle. When it comes from our heart, and our heart is consecrated to God, and that, we have to live what we believe. That's what being a Christian is. It's Christ-like. It's, I have in my life, I don't like to call myself a Christian. I want to be a Christian. I always want to be a Christian. I'm not there yet. I'm on the road, and I'm traveling there. But I don't dare take that name because it makes me think that I've already arrived, and I don't like that because I fall when I think that I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to be a Christian always. And that's what drives me.
Is wanting to do what that name means.
I don't want to bring shame upon my Savior by calling myself a Christian and being a hypocrite.
Yeah, I think when she's talking about the youth being frivolous and laughing and jesting and all that kind of stuff. Does God not want us to have fun?
Now, he gave us personalities, but we
Okay.
can, we can be lighthearted.
So why is this so wrong in the office? Okay, there's a time for everything. So you've got to distinguish when it's time for play, and then distinguish what kind of play will glorify God. I mean, there's some things that we shouldn't even do, even if it's time to play. There's certain types of play that shouldn't even be involved in. But there's a time for everything. And conversations of the world, there's a time for that, and there's a time when there's not time for that. I mean, we really should, on God's holy Sabbath day, to really, I don't know, stay in His Word, stay focused in what He's done for us, and to do the right thing. So what else did you get from that? Yes?
Since there's two testimonies, one with the adults and one with the children,
Mm-hmm.
the youth,
Mm-hmm.
it seems to me that the adults were not setting very good examples, or these youth would not have grown up like this.
That's very true.
So,
You know, I had that same kind of thought this week where, you know, it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Well, that can be either for good or for evil. Because the parent who trains up the child without God, that's the way he's going to end up. Unless he has an experience with the Lord. Because that's the way he was trained.
They don't discern sacred things.
They what?
They don't discern sacred things.
Oh, they don't discern sacred things. That's true. Because they haven't had the relationship to discern the sacred. They haven't been taught. So you're right. If the youth in the office would see a different way of the adults running the office, if they didn't like what the adults were doing, they wouldn't be there very long.
Well, maybe if the adults were preoccupied in the previous lesson, like Jan was saying, maybe they weren't setting the right example, because she was talking about the adults having other things on their mind, whether it be merchandising or trafficking or whatever. And of course that prevented them from being a positive example and the right example to the youth.
Exactly. The paragraph that two paragraphs that Marlene read, there was a lot of things in there. Who really couldn't stick around very long because of the atmosphere? The angels. They were sent to help because this was a message of life or death to the material that was being published and sent out. And they wanted to bless it. They couldn't even stay around. Are there situations where you kind of at first feel that the angels are there with you, and then all of a sudden they're not present? Just by the whole atmosphere just kind of really changing. Sometimes you're in a situation where you should be there, but you can tell the atmosphere, the way it started, went awry. And then there's other times when you thought you could be in a situation that was okay, and the minute it got started, you knew that it's time to leave. Because this isn't, the angels aren't even going to be here. Sometimes we've been in those situations as well. But they were really, really wanting to be there. And do we know how serious life is? Do we know what we're supposed to be here for? What is our mission? Where are we headed? Do we want to go it alone? Does God want us to go alone? No? Tell me what you get out of these paragraphs that you've read. Share with me what it has done to you as you read it. Anything? Jerry?
It brings to mind, in the last paragraph you were reading, it said, all should feel the office is a holy place, as sacred as the house of God. In that context, what brought to my mind was Nadab and Abihu,
Oh, yes. Okay.
because they, mingled sacred with holy. And they didn't dare back then. Well, they did. Most of them
The
did
priest
not dare
would not dare.
do that because it was such a solemn place.
So what kind of character did they develop? Selfish, pride, that they felt like that whatever they did, God should accept. And they don't realize there is holy, and then there's unholy.
And the two should not be mingled.
And the truth should not be mingled. Isn't that so offensive to God? I mean,
Well, he gave them as an example.
yeah.
And even then, so told Aaron, don't even cry for him. That alone, I mean.
Those were his sons.
Yeah, those were his children.
His children, and they were representatives of God to the people. And they showed the wrong representation of God. But to not even weep that God struck them dead, and they be your children.
God was trying to send a message that it was solemn work that they were supposed to be doing. And that they in their heart, they disdained him. And, they were drunk and they thought, okay, Father's fire. Let's just light it. We got, and they didn't even think about the repercussions. And that God had said, do it this way. So it puts me to mind that in this, that, the angels are there. They're wanting to bless. That it said, the voiceless preachers, which was the written word.
Mm-hmm.
They were there waiting and wanting to bless. And the behavior of the people that were there was so offensive to them that they left. Because they didn't grasp the sacredness of the word.
This is,
I had a question.
yes.
Now, they were engaged in menial tasks. They weren't actually, were they actually creating the type?
Well, it says right there that they came into where they were in the type room where they were setting the type.
But they didn't write the words. They were just setting the type.
I think that's the way it was.
I'm just curious, folding
They were folding the magazines and stuff, so it looks like this is the printing press part.
So maybe they didn't consider the work to be that important.
It's possible.
Because the words were already prepared. But, they were setting the type to print the words, or some mistakes could be made. I'm curious what the angels could add in that context. I'm asking a question now. Because,
Sure, that's what we want to do. We want to discuss.
I can see in the editors and so forth putting the words together correctly, trying to make sure the words that they said were the right words in the right way. Now we've got the next step, and I know that every task that we have to do, we do to the best of our ability to the honor of God. But what maybe the youth didn't see that as an important word. What could the angels add?
I think the angels were adding the blessings to the work and how it was being done.
And to the workers?
And to the workers. But like Janet said a while ago, if the leaders had taken a different attitude towards the importance of the work, they could have maybe shared with the youth what was in there, and they could have discussed. It could have been a much more spiritual atmosphere, to where the youth could have seen or even read what was in there. They probably had no idea what was on the page. Like we were saying, they're working for a wage. So if the adults weren't taking the time to show the importance of the work that they were doing in getting a message out for life or death, it might have encouraged those youth to read it, maybe study it as they were putting the thing together. Maybe they could even be getting in little prayer groups and praying over these messages to go out. The whole atmosphere could have been very spiritual if the example was there for them. And sometimes we just don't really look at the big picture. We don't look at everything that we do. The Lord can use it for good, or Satan can use it for his benefit. And being stuffed up in a probably maybe even a small little space with no ventilation, and you're sucking in the carbon dioxide that your lungs are giving off, and you're not healthy, and your mind's not clear and sharp, all of that could have affected them.
So as we're talking, the thought came to me that
Okay.
Just like when we pass out literature,
Mm-hmm.
we pray that the literature and the people that receive it will be blessed. Those young people could have been praying for the people that would receive literature. They were prepared.
Yes, that's true too. And sometimes I wonder if when we go out to pass out literature, you know, I've been in groups where we pray first before we go out, and we're praying for those individuals, and you're praying that the literature will be read. You're praying that the heart will be softened. But if you're going out and passing out literature and you're just having a conversation and it's just pieces of paper that you're strewing around, are the angels really participating in seeing that those pieces of paper are read or are seen? I'm even praying for the ones that get dropped in the garbage can, that somebody will come along and want it and pick it up and be blessed by it. I think that's our mission, is that everything we do, we have to have a spiritual connotation to it. And we have to make sure that that's our focus. Not only at church, but in our everyday life. And we even have to guard it at church. I mean, really, really, if somebody would just, if they see the direction in which things are going, have the care and concern to say something. I think sometimes we might be quiet because we don't want to offend anybody. But who's being offended by our conversation when it's not on spiritual things on God's Sabbath day? Huh? Like she said, Phineas and Nahab and Abihu, right? Those two, drunken and still want to participate in the church service and do their own thing. How offensive to God. And we need to, like I said earlier, we need to stay focused. What is today? Who are we worshiping? Who are we talking to? It's holy time. He set it apart. We've decided to enter into it. If you want to do that, then go away, you know? But enter into it with him and be a part of it. But just to read about how the angels just said, an angel, the heavenly messengers came to bless, that the truth carried by the voiceless preachers might have a sanctifying, holy power to attend its mission. But those engaged in this work were so distant from God. They possessed so little of the divine and were so conformed to the spirit of the world that the powers of darkness controlled them, and they could not be made susceptible of divine impressions. They couldn't even be told that you're you're off base here. I bet they would, if somebody would have gone in and told them, hey, this is, this carousing and jesting and joking and laughter and stuff doesn't belong here, they probably want to put that person out. Who are you to tell me that? This is my job.
Where you read there about the youth were deceived. They thought they were just fine. They thought they were,
Yeah.
rich and greased in goods, needed nothing and knew not. They didn't even know they were poor and miserable.
No, and half the time we don't either.
That's true.
We don't know that.
I think the commonality between both the adult and the young was the motives, the selfishness, whether it be the money, the merchandising, or the youth, for financial gain. So I think that, in the motives was
Selfishness.
right, the selfishness, and the more selfishness, then of course the further away from God it's going to be.
And who is the father of selfishness? So who are you connected with when you think of self first before others? Yeah.
So you think that there were, well, I guess in my mind, if I think that if these were all volunteers doing the work, how different it would be.
That's a good point, because if they were volunteers, it would be because they want to be there. And they would have a different focus on why they're doing what they're doing, because it's by choice. They should have really been thankful that they got a job and they got paid for it, because that's a blessing. Yes, Jerry?
I thought this came to me. I was thinking to myself how many times that actually applies within our own ranks.
Mm-hmm.
And that there are adults who have children of age, and they want them to kind of follow in their footsteps and follow up and have a job within
Their
the
own.
church
Oh, okay.
as a whole, and they make provision to draw their child in to give them the security of being within and underneath the umbrella. And the children aren't consecrated. And
They've done the outward planting without planting the inward seed. If they had lived the life,
instead of choosing the best person for the job,
right,
whoever it may be, they bring
they
a
secure it
family member.
for someone that they haven't actually nurtured to be qualified for the leadership. It's like, well, my father was a pastor, and I guess I'll be a pastor, and my son's going to be a pastor whether he likes it or not. That's not the way God chooses the person to lead his people. So, yeah, there's a lot of lessons to learn in this, and selfishness seems to be the underlying situation here. They were thinking of self before they were thinking of what they were doing or why they were doing it. And so she's just giving them admonition to do the right thing, actually. She says there at the very end that they had associated it with everything. Wait a minute, let me start over. I saw that strangers from abroad, oh, that's what it is. Your work and your influence affects others. And what they think they see and what they saw are two different things, They came to see one thing, and what they saw was something totally different.
Couldn't help but think of Luther when he went to Rome. Priest.
Yeah.
What he saw, so revolted him because he was so deep into the Word that the practice was so divorced from the truth that he started the Reformation in Germany. He was so revolted by the contrast.
I was thinking too of the end time when it says that God's people, when they really get down and pray for the righteousness of Christ, and it's seen in their life, and when the time comes, people will see what's going on in the world, and they'll see this group of people that are standing for God, and their decision, if they really want to follow the Lord, they're going to ask, what is it that you have? And we can share with them. I mean, I think the fourth angel and spreading the latter rain is just going to be just awesome, because there are people that are going to come out from everywhere who have lived up to all that they know. And like Gail was saying this morning, we have the truth. And I don't want somebody to say, you knew and you didn't tell me. Or for somebody to say, wow, what's going on? And you can say, you know, the sanctuary message in the Bible tells us all what Christ has done for us. And Christ when he came as our Savior, and Christ when he was in heaven as our high priest, and Christ in the most holy place as the judge and our advocate. And he's coming to get us, to take us home. This world is not our home. All the evil in the world today, we don't have to live here forever. It's coming to an end. And are we ready to share that message? I think that's what he wants us to do. Brothers and sisters, it is not far away. And we have to be prepared that when things happen, it's going to be fast and rapid. And that's not the time that you need to stop and think, oh, do I want to do this or don't I? You're going to do the little steps that you've been doing all along, and you'll be in one direction or the other without even realizing it. Your mind will already be set in the path in which you're going to go. So now's the time to choose which way you want to follow. So that's the end of this testimony. And then next week, we will start on the next one. It's called Conflicts and Victory. Oh, that's really good.